Hey guys, Enkidu here. So I picked up Last Epoch, which is an action RPG, just a few weeks ago, and the very first character I did was a Bladedancer. So I think it turned out pretty well, and I wanted to show a little bit of the stuff that I learned, a little bit about what Last Epoch is, and what I thought was a solid build. So Last Epoch is a game that's in early access. What it means by that is basically you pay about half price for a full game, and it's only about half a game. So it was 35 bucks on Steam, and there's a patch, every couple of months. They add a bunch of new stuff, they add a bunch of new items. Okay, cool, whatever. Let's get into the actual build. So I started as I think they called it a rogue. Yeah, I think you start as a rogue, and by starting as a rogue, you get all of these skills, and then by playing as a blade dancer, you get those skills. If you play as a marksman, which is like an arrow character, a bow and arrow character, you get these skills. The falconer will come out probably this year, maybe next year. But I wanted to show you how I built this. So I built it as Flurry as my single target, and then Shift is my utility and movement skill, and my Shift procs Shadow Cascades. So I went into the passive tree, and I put 40 in the base rogue class and 67 over here. Again, like you could drop 10 of those, but flat damage works a little differently in this game. It's not adding the flat damage to your weapons, which is then multiplied by the percentage melee physical damage that you might have in the weapon, like you would in PoE. Instead, it just adds all that flat damage to your character. It adds all the attack speed to your character. The weapons that you're holding are essentially stat sticks, so the plus 38 and then plus 24 melee physical damage. That's just all damage to my attacks, not necessarily to the weapons, if that makes any type of sense. Okay. Wrong tree. Okay. I did health and dexterity. Dexterity scales all our stuff. As you see, the scaling tags actually put dexterity, 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 dexterity. Dexterity actually gives you a little bit of dodge too, but like almost none. That's one of the really tough things in this game is just avoidance scaling in general. Okay. So attack speed, fizz, health, and dexterity. Just a little bit here because it's just flat dodge rating just doesn't do very much. Less damage while moving. It's like, well, for the most part, yeah, I'm moving, but whatever. Haste on hit chance. Haste, if you hold down Alt, gives you 30% movement speed. So I wanted to make it a fast little character. You do have to spec 1 point so that you can dual wield, and when you do dual wield, you take 15% increased damage, which I thought was an odd choice from a design perspective, but whatever. I wanted to give it a shot. Increased damage while dual wielding, dodge rating by dual wielding, and then I wanted to go crit. So I invested in crit in just about every spot that I could. I looked at the tree and said, well, if I run one sword and one dagger, this node double dips. So the 8 points I've spent there gives me 128. And then over on into the Bladedancer tree, I'm getting some dexterity and glancing blow. Glancing blow deals 35% less damage, but again, I don't have much because it's very, very difficult to stack mitigation in this game. A little bit to gain a Dusk Shroud, and then on into melee attack speed and Dusk Shroud when I hit. So this is a Dusk Shroud when I am hit, and this is a Dusk Shroud when I hit enemies, right? A Dusk Shroud grants you dodge and chance to receive glancing blow. So it's just, you're hitting a bunch of stuff very quickly. You have a reasonable chance of surviving the next time they hit you. That's the idea. Again, going into move speed, melee damage, just because that's what the character's built around. I found this node, and I was so happy when I saw it, because life leech in general is pretty slow in this build, but with increased leech rate, it becomes a lot better. Like, a lot better. It's to the point where I actually ran a relic, which is one of the pieces of gear that you have here, with increased leech rate as well, and that stacks. So 90 some odd percent leech rate, it's not life gain on hit levels, but it's nearly instant. So damage, speed, crit chance with a sword and dagger. I already told you I wanted to run sword and dagger. This is really cool. When your health drops below 70%, you gain a silver shroud. Silver shroud is a buff that grants you 100% dodge the next hit. So it makes it a lot harder to get burst down very quickly. Now, it's got a 15-second cooldown, but this will save a lot of deaths. A little bit of that just to get over here. and then your hits have a chance to shred armor. I didn't find this to be very effective, but any hit chance you have when you attack this quickly with a Bladedancer character with all the attack speed scaling that we have is going to be effective. But I'd put it on, I'd take the points off, I'd hit stuff. I didn't really see a difference, but maybe that's just because enemies don't have too much armor at this point. Because most of our hits are crits, we can go crit multiplier plus 75, less damage dealt by non-critical hits. The vast majority, there's a shrine you could hit in the game where it gives you 100% crit chance, and it only gives us a few thousand DPS. So we're above 90%, maybe below 95%. We're very close to the cap of crit. So this is a net positive node of more. You can have an additional shadow. Skills used by shadows deal increased damage and then maximum shadows. Okay, cool. So our skills. By being a rogue, we get these. By being a Bladedancer, we get these. When you specialize in a skill, like at level 10 or level 5, then 10, then 20, then 40, then 60, or something like that, you unlock these specializations, and each character can only specialize in 5. When you specialize in a skill, each skill has a skill tree beyond the passive skill tree, which gets confusing to say that there are multiple skill trees in the game. But you could take the skills in a wide variety of different directions, and for the most part, you want to be using and mapping the skills that you specialized in. But I'll show you how I've done these. So Flurry, I use as my single target. I wanted to do more damage, of course. I wanted to have a base critical strike chance, so +6 to the flat percentage. So if you had swords that were at 5, now they're at 11, right? Makes sense. Increased multi, okay, cool. Makes absolutely sense. And the max you'll ever have is 20 points in this, unless you have a piece of gear which gives you +2. That's why that has +2. So Flurry has increased attack speed, of course. And then I needed to go up here for sustain. So some life and mana leech. You know, by like level 20 or so, you get life and mana, or not and mana leech, but just life leech, which is great. This, which is an absolutely wasted point in my eyes at least. But I needed to spend the 1 point to come over here to get +1 mana gained on hit. +1 mana gained on hit allows me to, and this is Flurry, use Flurry, and as long as I'm hitting stuff, I keep even on my mana. So that was pretty crucial. So unfortunately, in order to make Flurry work, I thought that you needed these 2 points. And of course, those 2 points were prerequisite at this point. See the 2 dots there, so you need to spend 2 here to go there. See the 1 dot here, so you need to spend 1 there to go there. That's the minimum. Okay, Flurry is now a channeled ability, but costs 5 mana per second. Without this node, Flurry actually costs no mana. Which I've heard people say that in Path of Exile for almost a decade. If I'm hitting things with a stick, why am I using mana? This makes no sense, I'm not casting a spell. Well, in a lot of skills for Last Epoch for attack characters, you're not using mana, but it's channeled. And it doesn't change the DPS, except to say that it basically hits about twice as much. So if you're going to go Flurry, and if you're going to go Flurry for single target, get this node. Okay. And then Flurry does more damage multiplicative with other modifiers for each second channeled up to a maximum. So if I'm just standing there for 5 seconds and attacking, the DPS goes up. Cool. So what does this look like? There's actually a dummy we could test. So I just hold still, and as you can see, the yellow numbers are all crits, and the damage, probably averages out at 9 or 10,000 a hit. Now, the dummy here in town has no resistances and such, like everything's set at 0, so it just shows you essentially your maximum DPS without any other buffs or anything like that. But you see it doesn't touch our mana. Okay, cool. And you see we're getting a little buff down here at the bottom for haste, for increased movement speed, which allows me to move around, stuff like that. Again, it's meant to be, and the black is the dusk shrouds that I'm popping on myself that give me a bit more defense. Okay, what are some of the other skills that we're using? The primary defensive skill that we're using is Smoke Bomb. So it throws a smoke bomb at your feet that blinds enemies, grants you haste. While you remain inside it, the smoke bomb grows in size over its duration, and it lasts 4 seconds. So, applies slow to enemies within the cloud each second. Okay, well if they're in the cloud fighting me, I want them to be slower. This was a whatever point. I really couldn't decide what to do with it, so maybe that's not optimal. Smoke cloud lasts longer. Yep, that's pretty basic, so it's now 6 instead of 4. I gain a little bit of damage while I'm in the cloud, right? You and your allies, again, there's no allies since there's no multiplayer in this game yet, but probably before the end of the year. 4 seconds while inside the cloud, granting increased melee and whatever. Okay, the smoke cloud has a chance to create a shadow each second at a random location inside the smoke cloud. So, I smoke cloud. There's a shadow. There's a shadow. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. Right? So it just, while I'm in there, it creates a shadow. That becomes very important later, so you'll see. All right. And then I glancing blow and a buff duration for shrouds, dusk shrouds more frequently. Again, just trying to buff my defense just a little bit. Starting area 40%, that's great. Applies frailty. Again, this is only for 1 second, so it's like you could easily just lose that point and lose that point and invest a bit more in here. I don't know. Like I said, I've only played the game for a week or 2 or 3, and I was still playing around with some stuff, but you could very easily move that. I did invest in these points just to come down here and get the Silver Shroud, so I have 1 Silver Shroud when I go below 70% life automatically, just for 1 point in the passive tree, which I find amazing. And then the next one, when I Smoke Cloud. So, to the best of my knowledge, I could Smoke Cloud, get a Silver Shroud, auto-dodge the last one. They hit me once, put me below 70%. I auto-leech back up to full. That pops Silver Shroud again from my passive tree, and then I dodge again. So it's like I was only hit 1 time instead of 3. So for a couple of points, I thought that was pretty worth it. Okay. This is some of why the shadows were important. My shift, which is my movement ability. Every character comes with a movement ability. Teleport a short, fixed distance in a target direction. I'll show it to you after I explain all the stuff, because otherwise it's very confusing. So shifting heals you a little bit. Shifting consumes mana, since it's a spell, kind of makes sense. And then this is gaining some mana back. When I do shift, I have some increased movement speed for after. I leave a shadow behind at the place you shifted from. And if using a melee weapon, you attack with Shadow Cascade at the end of shift. And it's like, well, hold on, what's Shadow Cascade? Shadow Cascade is one of the skills that we got. Oh, where is it? There you go, from being a Bladedancer. It does a lot, 33,000 damage. That's my single target? Wait, and does that mean I can auto-proc attacks by using my movement skill? Yes, it does. So if you leave a shadow behind at the place you shifted from, using a melee weapon, you attack with Shadow Cascade at the end of shift. You're invulnerable while shifting, which is by far the best defense. You have dodge chance, whatever, that's a point to going here. You have a chance to drop an acid flask on departure, and you have a chance to drop an acid flask on arrival. Now, here's the fun part. Shadow Cascade and acid flask is getting automated from shift, my movement skill. So I specialized in Shadow Cascade and Acid Flask. The buffs from the skill tree of Shadow Cascade and Acid Flask also apply to the automation of casting it from shift. So, it does more damage, whatever. Haste on hit. So I get haste, which is more movement speed. Does not stack. I shred their armor 400%. I don't know if that means 100% of the time, or if enemies are resistant to it, I still do it, or if it's to increased effect if I go over 100, but either way, they have, let's just say they have no armor if I hit them with this. They're slowed. Acid Flask hits into larger areas since I'm doing effects, that's positive. It travels farther, and it causes frailty. Frailty causes them to do less damage to me. Okay, cool. Shadow Cascade, this is the big ticket item, right? Shadow Cascade does more damage per shadow. As you recall over here, we were investing in creating shadows when we were in Smoke Bomb as well. Oh, wrong one. Chance to dodge while using Shadow Cascade, that's fine, but I mean, when I'm Shadow Cascading, it's when I'm moving, so that's whatever. Damage but no attack speed scaling, doesn't really matter to me. Damage is great. Damage per sword, damage per dagger. Again, it makes sense if you're going Bladedancer to be a sword and dagger character. Increase damage, and if you hit at least 4 enemies, your next attack deals increased damage. So that's great, because I could dash out of the way, then single target them. Shadow Cascade is increased AoE. Shadow Cascade does more damage per melee attack speed that you have, and I have 89%, so it's like that's a decent amount right there for 1 point. Shadow Cascade base crit, but that's fantastic. More crit's always good. Base multi, or not base multi, but... And then Shadow Cascade on kill, and then I'm throwing daggers. Okay, cool. So here's what this actually looks like. A shift, which is just a teleport. So I'm going to teleport from here to here. but I'm going to proc my Acid Flask and my Shadow Cascade all by itself. So I'm just going to hit E. You saw very quickly a flask here and a flask here. That's the green, right? So it's dropping flasks when I leave and when I arrive, and then it's doing a little blade spin animation, which is the Shadow Cascade. Again, I'll just do it alone. That's a Shadow Cascade, and that's an Acid Flask. But E is automating that. E being because I mapped it there. And you can just hold this down. It's got through 2.7 second cooldown. You could be running and hit it and keep running. You could be attacking and hit it. It doesn't interrupt anything else. So as I'm just going around, I'll just like zip through a pack, and oftentimes this will just kill it. If I'm on a big boss, a smoke cloud. There's one. We're all going to use it. 1, 2, 3. So I'm attacking, smoke bomb, I attack, I get a bit more. Shadow Cascade, come back, attack. Shadow Cascade, come back, attack. Or a big AoE that comes through, I'll zip to the other side and doing supplemental damage with Shadow Cascade. Smoke cloud again, come back. So it ends up being a very fast, very nice character. And you see all the buffs and stuff that you're getting while you're in the cloud. But basically that's it. It's just, you smoke cloud when you want to stand still and beat somebody up. You use this as your single target and you use your shift to get around. And up next I'll show you guys what it looks like in the endgame system and a bit of the gear. Okay, so before we get too far, I actually wanted to show the gear. So I'm a rogue, I'm a Bladedancer, I'm dual wielding. So I'm running a katana in one hand, remember, because I wanted to go sword and dagger because the way my passives work down. The katana is I think it's a base level 70 type of one-handed sword. It's very fast. You see base attack rate 1.2, base melee fizz is decently high. Some of the highest base melee fizz I saw was somewhere around the 50 or low 50s mark. So to get 38 is like kind of mediocre, but the 63 crit multi on the implicit's actually quite good. That can go up to 75, so again, you could even get a better roll than this. Increased critical strike chance is decent. Again, because I'm not crit capped, I'm just close. 24 flat melee physical, you see that's the max craftable for the top two. Basically, it's pretty cool, because when you play this game, to really get an endgame character, you're playing solo self-found, and there is no trade, and there is no multiplayer, so everything that you have, you're dropping. And you're crafting it yourself, or you're crafting it yourself, and or, I suppose. So you learn a fair bit about the crafting, but I'll go into that a little bit after this. So the sword, again, just max out the melee fizz and get crit, get attack speed, get something else in the prefix. Prefixes are all offensive slots, pretty much. Suffixes are all utility and resistances, if you want to think of it that way. The purple gear, as you see, this is just yellow or gold, so this is a rare. Purple is a rare that has a buffed up stat. So as you saw, 24 melee fizz with a range of 21 to 26 is the top that you could do for craftable. This is almost double that for melee fizz right here, so it's drop only. Normally, it can drop, I think, higher than tier 5 as a white value for melee physical damage, for instance. It could do this with life, it could do this in any number of things. But this is sort of the end game for your character, is like the last 20 levels or so, from 70 to 90, let's say. You're going through, you're doing the end game systems, and you're looking for purples that are on a good base. The obsidian dagger was the type of dagger that I wanted, so I got lucky with that because it's got base crit, it's got base melee fizz, and it's got base increased physical damage. And then it also rolls in with a nice purple stat. So in this case, the fact that it did roll melee fire damage is just like mediocre, right? I would have preferred attack speed or crit or something else like that. But the base physical damage on the base that I wanted, very lucky. Okay, cool. Increased crit strike chance with Flurry. Flurry is the name of the skill that I use. So again, that's really cool. That's a purple. So this dropped for me in one of my first little endgame things. The base that's on increased dodge rating and armor, it's just completely mediocre cooldown. And then some resistances. So it's just decent overall. The chest piece, I also thought I got very lucky for. This actually dropped with just the health roll and armor, and I crafted the other two pieces on, so I felt very happy about that. Or I crafted at least one of the pieces on. So crit strike chance with the equipped sword, again, because we're not crit capped. +2 to Shadow Cascade, and then increased melee damage, which is just a boatload of DPS. Like 44 down to 36. Like it's almost a quarter of my damage is a chest piece that has locked in life, right? Like that's pretty darn ideal. Again, I did want to prioritize life. I wanted to prioritize life leech and life leech rate, so I increased physical damage dexterity, which again scales our damage. So in between increased physical damage and the dexterity, 41 to 44. It's a fair bit, and then plus some life, so each one's 60, 70 life. That's not bad, plus it caps the resistances I need. This guy's pretty similar, a little more dexterity, significantly less phys damage, but it has the resistances I need, so it's nice. Again, the vitality and health regen base I found to be desirable for, characters that are life characters. Gloves are probably my weakest slot, but increase crit strike chance base with dexterity, with attack speed, with a very small amount of void resistance and health. Again, what does that do for me? 39 to 44. I was looking to squeeze DPS and I was looking to squeeze life out of all the slots. That was really the way I felt like scaling this character, because again, you just can't get quite enough of the mitigation that you have in a game like PoE, for example. Okay. I already showed this briefly, but a boatload of poison resistance, life, leech rate, fizz damage, and multi. It rolled like that, and then the other things I just slapped on myself, I believe. There are relics for crit, there's relics for fire damage, a bunch of different stuff like that. Again, I just felt like the leech rate made more sense with the way that the game is. Belt, what did I do? Max craftable? Yeah, that's probably what I did. I think I just got this from the vendor and crafted it mostly myself. Fizz damage and then mana regeneration, it was just almost a dead stat for me, but it's something. Double percent life with flat life I thought was great. And then the boots rolled ridiculously. These dropped with the purple health roll and the dexterity, and then I crafted on the move speed and LA resistance. These are awesome. I played enough to the point where I can get purples in slots that were rolled the way I wanted, that happened to roll the way I wanted, and then they were good. So there are a lot of resistances in this game. You have to, in order to play the game, you have to cap 7 resistance types, which is a lot. It's like a lot. Now, gear can roll with a lot of resistances on them. You could see 120 some odd resistances across a piece of gear. Of course, then having it with DPS, you could actually kill monsters, or move speed, or life, so you don't die to the monsters, and it's a balancing act. Oh, and I forgot to show this. Fizz resistance, necrotic resistance base, with crit multi, fizz, and then I crafted on the last two. So just this amulet alone caps 4 of my resistances, right? So that's pretty desirable. For a long time, up until level 83, and I'm only 94 right now, and the game only goes to 100, but of course it takes a very long time, the last 10 levels, I was using exclusively little relics to cap my resistances, or to get as close to cap as I could, or to cap 1 or 2 at a time, right? To the point where I had a stash tab that was mostly just all idols about, here's lightning, here's health, here's all LE, here's fizz, here's this and that. As I got more and more resistances, I was finally able to drop a few of them and run DPS things in here, since there aren't really defensive relics that you could run, or excuse me, idols. I'm using the wrong word. So, again, I'm at 44. Take off my 3 DPS things, which, ostensibly I could run 1 or 2 more. Again, that's another quarter of my damage. So just these 2 things together, the chest piece, and then these 3 little guys are half of my DPS. Right? Like, that's a lot if you consider it from just those pieces. And again, you could roll the non-purple of this and just do crafted life of 60 or something like that. 100 life is not going to make or break almost any build that I do, to my knowledge. I'm new at the game, but whatever. So these things end up being super important. So when you see ones that are crit strike, chance with a dagger, damage while wielding a sword, damage while wielding a sword, multi while dual wielding, stuff like that that's just good for your character, throw them in your stash. Stashes are very easy. You just, boom, 10,000 gold. Look at that. I have... How much gold do I have? Where do I see that? 900,000. Okay, I could buy many stashes. I'm keeping sets and uniques and just the maybe gear that I had. Okay, so I've shown you the gear, I've shown you the skills, I've shown you the tree. Now let me show you some of the endgame systems. So you have these nice little pretty waypoints. It's a very fun game. I think I spent maybe 5 or 6 hours to get through the story, and then you're about level 50. You get your ascendancy, or your... Actually, do they have a specific name for it? Here's the base class, and then here's the advanced class, if you want to put it that way. You play 0 through about level 25 with your base class and your base skills, which are, again, if you're a rogue, you play these. And then you come over here, and then you play 25 through 55 or thereabouts. It depends on how much content you skip or if you full clear with your ascendancy class. And then you're able to go through and do the endgame system. And because this has the +2 Shadow Cascade, that's what I was talking about earlier, where you get the bonus points. It's just AoE, and I'm just filling out AoE and damage per shadow. So anyway, then you unlock what is basically the mapping system, where you start out as level 55, then 60, then 65, then 70, then 75. And you can just click on these little waypoints. And this takes you to the Monoliths system. And then you interact with this little guy. And because I've already beaten all of the Monoliths, I can do the legendary version of the Monoliths. So let's just look at that really quick. And this is what they would, minus everything being revealed, this is what they would look like initially, where you have very little or no stability, and all of these would be locked. And as we can see here, if we just mouse right there, you see this gives us +38 stability. Each tick here, 1, 2, and 3, unlocks a quest echo. So if I did, I don't know, 20 or so, yeah, I did 26 echoes the first time. I did 26 individual little maps that increased my bar up to the point of 750 stability. I did this mission, then this mission. The last one is always a boss, and it's normally an act boss that you saw and fought throughout the story, but they're buffed up to map tiers of levels. So, as you go into the legendary ones, the enemy modifiers get pretty bananas. Chance to shred armor, increased health and damage, crit strike, crit health. So they have 86% increased health plus 50% more health just as base, but the quantity and rarity goes up to the ceiling. So let's just do this one. And as you can see, these all have different things you could get rewarded with. Like, I could just do this and get a unique item. Oh, why don't we try that out? Why don't we try to get a unique item, everyone? So this is what is referred to as the end part of Endgame, I think, for most players. Again, the level 100 scaled area. So let's just go take a look and see what's happened. I suppose I could actually look at the screen. And each one of these little maps or missions that you're doing has a modifier or an objective, I think would probably be the way to say it. So the objective for this one is destroy both spires, which is these green things that are coming where I'm standing. There are 2 things on the minimap that will continually spawn and do damage, which, you know, makes looting a pain in the butt, but so they're spawning and doing damage, and your goal is to run around and kill them. So let's go try to find them. Not over there, huh? But you see the effect of the Shadow Cascade when you're just shifting. Go into a pack, boom, done. Get out of a pack. Get out of the AoEs. Come back, Flurry for the rest. You could pretty try to get out of the way of all of those AoEs, because there's green and red stuff going on the ground here. So some of the red stuff is monsters exploding, some of the green ones is, again, just the map objective. You gotta sort of intuit your cooldown because you don't have the time usually to look. Let the bear hit me a little bit here. I want to show you guys how fast I could leech. So it's pretty reasonable life leech rate, right? Just trying to show that a bit without actually dying. If I get hit by that green stuff, I probably just get one shot. Just because the map tier is so high. And again, shift is on cooldown most of the time, right? Or at least half the time. That was too much damage for me to stand in right there for sure. Try to zap and get out of the way, zap and get out of the way, because again, you know, you're a squishy little life character. Was it like at the beginning? Did I miss it? Where's the thing? Teleporting bears. Watch out for the falling everything. That's an example of a shrine. Where's this thing? Am I missing it? Oh, there it is. Alright, so put down my smoke cloud.
No.
You don't have too much time, unfortunately, to read things that are on the ground because there's plenty of stuff falling for your head. And not every monolith that you do is going to be stuff falling on your head that you slowly got to go kill a little turret that's just somewhere doing that. Some of them are just like slay the boss. Some of the other ones are, oh, I don't know, go talk to these people and defend this point, or, you know, some different things like that. So it's I think, better than Pewie's map system, because it's just 150 of the exact same map where you just run through it as quickly as you can. In these, you can go around and kill every monster, because you get a big loot pile at the end. And the loot pile at the end is positively affected by how many monsters that you killed. Cool. So the Echo is conquered. What that means is that the percentage stability has increased. Again, you want to increase the stability to the point where you can do these 3 little quests on the side. You do all 3 on the side, and you complete them. And then, where is it? I, P, C, E, S, C, I? Yeah, I, for inventory, and then into blessings. And then you get a blessing by killing the boss and by completing that specific timeline, that specific, like, let's say 55 Echo. I got this one. Increased adorned idol drop rate. And when you kill the boss after completing the entire timeline, you get to choose from one of them. Oh, look at this. I get increased experience, or I can increase ring drop rate. Some of the other ones are actually extremely good because they're resistances. And when you get resistances on the blessings, that means you could drop resistances on gear. You drop resistances on gear, that means you can put on more DPS-y gear instead of resistance gear. You get on enough DPS gear and take care of enough resistances, you could put on DPS idols. And like I showed you before, that's really good. So while I was going through, for the most part, the only stuff I picked up were these little augments here, and I'll actually show you this. So this was the guaranteed reward that I got, which is a unique that I already have. I got that just from completing the Echo, because again, that was just this little piece. And as you see, now this has 5 and this has 2 left. So if I was to go down 5 down, it would have Frenzy and Haste on hit for 5 in a row. So when you end up stacking the modifiers, they get really nutty. But the chest here at the end, to the right, is positively affected by how many monsters that you killed. And if you toggle your X, you get to see all the blues as well. And this is how I found some of my upgrades. Like, oh, there's a katana. 100% increased stun. Not very good, but it's got a well-rolled implicit. This is how I found my katana, actually, is it rolled with the melee fizz, and then I crafted up the crit and then the melee fizz to max, and then I just put on stun and ignite because I didn't care about the other suffixes, because, again, suffixes don't affect DPS. Alright, so here's something really cool. Ready? These are all crafting mats, basically. Transfer, done, no problem. Here's something not very cool. The unique, so let's double check that I have this. Yes, okay. Which one is rolled better? The one I already had in there. Cool.
Yes.
There are only so many uniques in the game. Like, the game's just kind of new, you know? It's not fully out there yet. And a lot of the uniques are minion-based. Like, I wonder if I can do this. Alright, so minion, 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 minion. So it's like almost a fifth of my uniques are exclusively minion uniques, or two-handers, or shields, or quivers. So it's just like there's nothing out. I just rolled rogue, and there's nothing out there for a rogue that doesn't shoot arrows. And I'm like, what's going on? So the vendor has some stuff you could always check. Again, once you get to the end game system. So okay, here's a cool example. So I'm gonna buy a rune of shattering, and that's a crafting mat. So I'm just gonna transfer it right over. Let's just say, oh, here's a good example. So let's just say I wanted to roll a spellcaster. Cool. Here's a wand that I just found at the vendor. It's tier 3.
Take care.
I can put this over here at the wand, and if I use a rune of shattering, I get a spell damage shard. So, if I'm like, I want to go full crit, everything like that, I'd come over here, I'd look for stuff that has crit rolls, and I would use the rune to blow them up and make more mats, or at least for, you know, a dozen or so hours until you have enough mats. Does it show me my mats? New materials? There you go. Some of them I have 50, 22, 50. I have like way too many. And then some I had very, very little. There's minion physical damage. I only have 9. Void penetration. I only have 2. Look at, I only have 1 of the various penetrations. So it's like if I wanted to do an elemental penetration build, I'd obviously want more. So there's a bunch of different runes, and this is the basis of the crafting system. You use the Boom Boom rune, as I've been calling it, the rune of shattering, to blow up stuff that has good rolls that you want to make shards of. And gear can drop with Shadow Cascade melee damage and increased crit strike chance rate. But you can't normally craft that. You're never going to kill a monster, and it's going to drop a crafting mat that has those two on it. So those rolls that I was able to craft on the purple chest that had the really nice roll of health were because I put them on there myself. So once you start seeing special shit like increased crit strike chance with Flurry and stuff like that, by the time you get to the maps, again around 55 or so, keep your purples, use them, or blow them up. Never just vendor a purple, even if it's not for your class, because you're going to get special stuff you can't get anywhere else, or in quantities you can't get anywhere else. Okay, some of the other runes. Reroll all affixes, which is the mods on an item. It's a fancy word for that. Within their tiers, but adds instability. We'll explain instability here with an example in a bit. Remove a random affix on an item, but adds instability. Probably not very useful, but, you know, potentially useful. Remove all affixes from an item, reduces instability to between 5 and 10, 15. If you had a really nicely rolled base, I suppose. Reroll all implicits on an item. Again, implicits are the above the line, so my range there for melee fizz is 38 to 38 and 50 to 75, so that would reroll just the multi, but it adds instability. This is more likely to result in a moderate roll. Probably just it's going to aim for the middle. I think that's what that means. Okay.
Yes.
So let's just say... Actually, let's go back over here and use this katana as an example. The Katana of Stone. Because I'm using katanas, and I'm using one-handed swords. Okay, cool. I don't want to blow it up, because the only thing it has on it is stun, right? Which is, you know, it doesn't add to my damage. What is it? 44 down to 37. So it's a shit sword, it doesn't do anything for me. Alright, cool. So let's add, oh, well, some melee physical damage. Let's add some melee physical damage. Boom, there you go, 97% chance to upgrade. When you do upgrade, make sure you use the Glyph of the Guardian. If you've played for more than an hour and a half, you probably have 10 of these that you've picked up and you had no idea what it did. They drop so commonly, there is no reason not to always use these in every crafting attempt. They're so common. I've done, I think, crafting on every slot of my gear, right? I've done every piece. I have an extra 450, and I'm not max level, and I haven't farmed for that long, and I haven't even completed the full endgame, so always use this. Completely mitigates a minor fracture. Okay, if I don't use these, I have a 3% chance of just outright bricking the item. It can, I think, just delete it. It can break it. It's like a Volorban path. It just can completely fuck with it and make it useless. If you use this, it goes to 100% chance. Boom. Now it has a little tiny baby roll of 5% melee fizz. What else do we want on there? Oh, how about some attack speed? Who doesn't like attack speed? Cool. Let's put on some attack speed. And then, do we dare put on, you could sort by suffix, you could sort, again, since I have my prefixes filled, I can put on suffixes like, oh, it's just, yeah, it's blind on hit. Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, cool. But it's little baby rolls. 8% attack speed, 5% melee fizz. So hit the arrow. Again, 100%. Well, then this one's 97. Oh, well, why is that? Well, because it's a tier behind, right? The tiers go inverted. Tier 1 is the lowest. Tier 5 is the highest craftable. So we're just going to alternate here. Oh, and then I fucked it. There you go. That's as far as that sword's going to go. Because now it's fractured, and I can't craft it anymore. If I didn't use these little glyphs, and it consumed a couple of my glyphs, each time I click craft, it consumes a glyph. If I didn't use that, it could have de-leveled the item back down a tier or two, or it could have, I think, just deleted the item outright. The glyph just makes it so that when it does crack or fracture, you can never craft it anymore. See, I can't do anything with it, right? Like, I can blow it up. I think that's all I can do to it. It makes it so that it doesn't ruin it, and it keeps it where it is. So right now, I took an attempt at making an upgrade, and it's worse. But it's actually moderately close. It's like, hey, that's not terrible. So it's like, oh, cool. But that's how you would upgrade stuff. So my maybe pile ended up being a bunch of gear like that. Like, oh, look at that. That's almost enough melee attack speed, but it's fractured. That's almost enough melee physical damage, but it's fractured. Here's one that has really nice elemental resistance and shadow cascade. You know, I was just holding on to gear that I thought might be good. So this is the game so far. There are a variety of different classes and skills, and all it has right now is global chat. Again, there's no multiplayer. Potentially by the end of the year that'll come in. But I came through and I did the vast majority of... I did at least 3/4 of the end game. Let's call it that way. And I knew nothing about the game, and I just played through. Like, I didn't cap my resistances till 83. So you could you can make an argument that the game starts once you actually cap all your resistances, right? If you're a Path of Exile player, that you'll understand that. The mitigation, just there's no acrobatics and dodge and spell dodge. Like, I have more armor than dodge despite having dodge. My glancing blow, does it tell me my glancing blow? Yeah, my glancing blow is 12% despite investing in glancing blow, and it's just like, I don't know. So I just went as much life as I possibly could, and then as much leech and leech recovery rate as I possibly could, so I could just stand in front of guys and just hit them and then zip out of the way of the bad stuff, you know. Reasonably good character, I think. I think this is probably a good way to build a Bladedancer. Some of the stuff I have seen is using Shift and then Shadow Cascade to throw... was they shurikens? I think there was a way to throw shurikens when you shift. Yeah, they were throwing shurikens and then they were getting bleed chance. So they'd shift every 3 seconds when it comes off cooldown. The shurikens would go auto-find enemies and put bleed on them, and then they'd just run around and just avoid them, which, you know, didn't really seem like an active, fun playstyle to me. But the way I built this, it worked. It was fun. I had actually a heck of a time with the game. But again, until you cap your resistances, you're going to just be blown up all the time by things you don't even know. And that feels unfair. And there's too many, for sure. Like, there can be half this many, and it would still be too many. I've always felt that in every action RPG, where it's just resistances are too much of a pain in the butt to put on, because they're mandatory. They're mandatory for every character, and anyone who tells you different is wrong. It's just, they're... Oh, look at this tanky character, and they cap 2 resistances. It's like, how many times have you died? Every half an hour? That's silly. It makes no sense. Oh, I just avoid all the damage. Like, well, maybe you can, but, you know, not everyone's going to do that. Like, that's just silly. So anyway... this is the way I built my little Bladedancer. I liked her quite a bit. And I'm working on another character next. I'm going to pull off at least a couple of the pieces of gear that aren't rogue specific. Like, that's dexterity specific, so maybe not. But that's a very generic, nice belt that can go on a lot of different characters. So I'll probably be doing that. And before I wanted to do it, I wanted to put together a video. Last Epoch is a lot of fun, and I hope you guys give it a shot. And thank you very much. Bye.